Hello and welcome back to my Unity tutorial series. Today is the very first episode. I'm happy to be here with you today, and today, as you may have guessed, we'll be looking at creating a project and getting your head around the interface that Unity proposes to you. So before we start, as a disclaimer perhaps, take a look at my previous video if you are not aware at all of what audience I'm targeting here. It's pretty clearly stated in the previous video if you want to know. But in any case, without further ado, let's get right into it. So we're going to load Unity here. And so the way I'm going to try to guide this tutorial series is basically we're going to make one of the most oversaturated type of tutorials on Unity. You may have guessed it, we're making a 2D platformer on Unity. Now, no worries, we're going to try to keep this as dynamic and as interesting and fresh as possible. I'm hoping to try different ways of teaching how to use Unity here. In any case, the odds are you won't have the screen I have right now because I already have a certain amount of projects and prototypes here. You might have to actually sign in before you get anywhere further. No problem, Unity is free. Just need to have an account with them. Make the account. It's well worth it, I'd say. Anyway, without further ado, let's create a new project. And we should be very original here and call it Platform. Then you get to choose a folder in which your project is going to be saved. Now you may see I have already something here. We'll get rid of that. And I thought, yeah, that's fine. So I tend to keep things organized here, so we call it Platformer. And it's a personal preference. I usually create 2 folders. Nothing you need to do here. I just like to have it. One where I put all the stuff which is unprocessed. Music, sound bits, clips, whatever you want, whatever you need, which you're not actually going to keep in the final build or in the actual game, really. But that's just my way of doing things. Do whatever you need to do. And then there's the actual folder of the project, Platform, which is the one I'm going to select here. You can choose 3D or 2D. We're going to go with 3D here. Keep in mind that it doesn't change anything in the end. It's just going to change, if I'm not incorrect, the basic setup when you create a new level, really. Or scene, but more vocabulary later. You have an option to have extra assets. It's going to add basically extra options. Just to give one example, cameras don't come in the default Unity with blur and bloom. You have to import those extra packages. Keep in mind it may be more taxing, it may increase the final size of your builds, so don't import just to import. Import what you need, and when you need it, keep in mind that, of course, you can import these assets later on, basically. Okay, congratulations, you just created your first project, probably, on Unity. Moving on into the point of this video, which is understanding the Unity interface and seeing what tools it provides us with, how they function, or at least to give you a basic understanding of what's going to happen on the screen. So, we'll look at each individual pane and quickly overview its functions, really. Starting with the main pane, I'd say, which is the scene pane. Keep in mind that the word scene in Unity is used for what in common language you'd call a level, really. One project has several scenes. As in a game, you'd have several levels, really. It really functions a bit like a level. So you'll see me moving around, so there's no magic to this. According to your keyboards, it's going to be a bit of a cut here, sorry, because I had to check up my keyboard keys because I happen to be using a French keyboard and not a British one or an American one. So to cater to the largest portion of the audience, I guess, I had to check my keys. Anyway, so to navigate your scene already, if you keep your right mouse button clicked, you'll see a little eye appears instead of your usual cursor. And dragging your mouse around then will allow you to rotate your vision. And whilst keeping that button pressed, if you use your typical WASD keys, you'll be able to move front, back, left, and right. Keep in mind A and W for basically moving vertically up and down, I guess. I don't really use it, to be quite honest. I mainly use the lateral and front back keys as well as the rotating. Moving on in the scene, you'll see you have two icons, a camera and the lighting. This is just because it's the basic scene setup which Unity provides you with when you create a new scene. But basically, a scene is composed of different objects. More on the structure of a level in the next video. But so you have objects, and each object has a position. And if you, let's say you lose complete focus, you're super far away, and you click, and you still have it selected, however, if click F, it brings you back to it, basically. Handy little key function if you get completely lost on the scene. Another thing you'll notice is it has like these little artifacts, little arrows. So you have a couple of shortcuts, namely A, Z, and E, which are very typical shortcuts for 3D programming, or editing, whatever. Any kind of 3D program, really. So according to which one you're going to use, sorry, it's Z, E, and R. So Z is going to allow you to, by dragging on any of the arrows, translate your object along any of the axes. Then you have these little rectangles. Do we even give a fuck about that? No one gives a damn about that, do we? Sorry, a bit of a cut, a little bit of a change in the script here. So basically, what these arrows do is allow you to translate it. Move, to be less fancy, move objects around according to the axis in question. Keep in mind that I'm trying to go a bit ahead of you here. That these axes are related to the object, but you can always change it back using this handy little button here, local and global. Basically, local vectors or global vectors, so local meaning the ones which are associated to the object, or global, the global grid of the actual level. Anyway, as you may have seen, I rotated the object, so that's the E shortcut. And once again, by dragging on these, clicking and dragging on these circles, you're going to be able to rotate your camera or object or whatever along that specific plane or axis, really, to be quite truthful. And the last one, R, which is to scale the object. Now, it doesn't really appear very well on it's not really going to work on the camera. So let me just add quickly an object, and I'll come back. Okay, I'm back, and now we have a cube, a beautiful little cube, which you can rotate as well. No problems there. Once again, global and non-global. And finally, R. Now, the key thing to remember with R for basically scale is, first of all, first property, you can't scale according to global axes. You see it's grayed out. You can only scale according to the object, which I guess kind of makes sense. Anyway, the key thing is here, a bit like for moving, really, you click on the axis which interests you, and to scale uniformly, you have this gray square in the middle, and if you click on it, it will scale uniformly relative to what it currently has, obviously. So those are the very basics of this interface. Moving on to the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is very simple once you've accepted the fact that a level is composed of different objects. It's basically the list of all of the objects. We'll go into more detail on how to use it on a few extra properties of it concerning parenting a bit later when we'll go more into detail. But it's the basic idea. It lists your objects in your scene. The project, on the other hand, lists all of your assets. So, if you remember the place where the folder you chose when you created your project, basically this project folder is the assets folder which you'll find in this folder that you chose. That's not clear, but it's okay. I'll give an example. Okay, so I created a couple of files here. I saved my scene, which I called level, and I created a folder called STRE. So to find out where precisely these files are, we're going to go back to this is the folder you chose for your project. In my case, it was platformer here in my platformer folder, which keeps things very confusing. Anyway, so I click on this, and here you have your project. And in your project, you have a folder which is going to be called assets. And this specific position is this one. So for instance, and it's interchangeable, if I click here, new folder, and I call it happy, refresh here, you have a new folder called happy. I recommend always using the project, the actual Explorer that Unity provides, just to make sure it's happy, really, basically. Just good practice, you know. But here you go. Moving on to the inspector. Once again, very simple. If you select any given object in your scene, as you may well imagine, every object has a certain set of properties, and they're all listed here. It's no sense going more into details on this until you understand how Unity actually functions, and that's going to come later. But keep in mind that all of the properties of any given object, game object, are listed here. Moving on! Choose the most standard stuff here. You've got your typical file with creating, saving scenes. It's where you get to compile your final build also. Edit, which has more uninteresting settings. The only thing I ever use, I think, is project settings, which changes a few settings you don't have easy access to, really, because you don't have to change them very often. Assets, which is a set of actions which you can do directly by going in your project folder and right-clicking as well. Same thing. Game object, which allows you to create new game objects. I remind you that game objects are what you have in your level, in your scene. And it allows you to create either blank ones, either prefabs, really, no, not prefabs, really pre-made sets of things if you already directly want a directional light or a camera or whatever. You don't have to build it from scratch. You can take already what's preset here. Components are basically the different properties which any given game object has, and it's going to allow you to add them. Not a very useful ones, once again, because you have other shortcuts to this, which are much easier to use. Window, which is going to allow you to open all the tabs you have here. Each of these are called a window, really. Scene, game, hierarchy, project, and not abs, they're windows. But you get the idea. And help, you have me. Anyway, thanks for sticking around if you did. Feel free to leave a comment, advice, anything. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content and you want more. And stay cool. By the way, I had an idea of next slide. It was a bit lame, so I didn't put it in finally. But this is what happens when you when you basically try to remove all the windows. Unity doesn't like it at all. So don't try that at home, kids. It's too dangerous for you.